Is this on? Yes. Start the meeting since everybody is here. Okay. So we're calling to order and roll call, please, Ms. Grimm.
Mr. Connors?
Yes.
Mr. Harshaw?
Here.
Ms. Barhu?
Here.
Mr. George?
Here.
Ms. Bowler?
Here. Introduction of city staff. We have Ms. Melissa Phillips, our development review technician, Mr. Ben Gross, our deputy city attorney, Ms. Becky Groom, our board secretary, and our IT department. And with that, we will move on to approval of the minutes from the last meeting, which was May 19th, 2022. Do we have any comments, questions, revisions?
If no comments, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the June.
Do we have a second?
And I second it.
Ms. Barhu, okay. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Great. Okay, and we will move on to Case A, which has been continued from last time, from May 19th and April 21st. Ms. Groom, if you could please read the case into the record.
A request by David Higgin for a variance from Article 4, Section 42B3 of the Land Development Code to reduce the minimum required street side setback from 15 feet to 5.10 feet on the northeast side and 11.82 feet on the southeast side, and to reduce the required rear yard setback from 25 feet to 13.56 feet. This will allow for the construction of a 720-square-foot garage. Property is located at 927 South Grandview, parcel ID 5309-17000140. The zoning on the property is single-family residential, and the future land use on the property is Level 1 residential. The property is also part of the South Atlantic National Historic District.
Okay, and to be clear, Ms. Phillips, so we were emailed a correction, which is part of, the updated packet, which is part of what we have here, right? And then it looks like we also have some diagrams that were not in that packet yet, or they're just bigger versions?
They're just bigger
Okay, perfect. I guess that was a long way of saying, is there anything here that wasn't emailed that's in addition to the email? Okay, perfect. Okay, great. We will get started. So last time I mispronounced your last name, but I think it's Hyam? Okay. I think last time I said Higgum, so I'm like, I'm going to say it right this time. So Mr. Hyam and Mrs. Strickland. Yes. Okay.
And just to be clear for the board members, by a vote of the membership, you continued this at the last meeting to allow the applicant to come back with an alternate plan for a smaller scale structure.
Correct. And some of the things we talked about were size, height. We were still talking about the material on the outside, the setbacks just in general, the industrial look of the building. And we did ask for some pictures and specifications, which you have provided us. So if you'd like to come up and tell us, I think we're pretty familiar with the structure, so maybe start with what's changed since the last time we were here and highlight those things for us.
Do I need to state my name?
Oh, yeah, please, just for the record, state your name and address.
My name is Gladys Strickland, and I live at 920 South Grandview Avenue in Daytona Beach.
Thank you.
All right. We sent you a copy of our revised specifications. So our proposed garage now has the following dimensions: width of 24 feet, length of 25 feet, wall height of 10 feet. The peak height of the garage is 13.3 feet. There will be 2 garage doors. Each will be 9 feet tall by 10 feet wide, and each will have architectural openings at the top, which are 45-degree angled cuts. The building has boxed eaves. It will have high-impact windows, one on each side of the garage. The sheeting on the sides and ends will run horizontal, which is the same as the concrete blocks on our house. The roof runs vertical. And the colors of the building will match the colors of our house.
Okay.
Okay.
My name's Dave Hyam. I live at 920 South Grandview Avenue. And I wanted to point out that we would like to keep the variance for the rear of the building the same, but bring, of course, the front of the building, if this was passed, would be 5 feet, which would affect the northeast easement variance there. Would actually add to it, not subtract. So it would be more distance from the easement to the front of the building. If we could keep it the same in the rear, it would allow us for that angle of the building. And that's for looks, but mainly for the driveway so we can pull in and out of the garage. It would make it a lot easier. It won't be such a sharp turn. Nothing else has really changed other than my grass died.
Yeah.
My well went down, so that's what I've been working on too. And we're still working on the house, and it'll get finished one way or another.
Okay, so it looks like the rear setback is staying at the 13.56, right? And then 11.82 is staying, and then the 5.1 is actually becoming around 6 feet. Six
Yeah,
feet,
between
give or take.
7, and the frontage of that will change also, but it will be more, and that's not even
Okay.
a question anyway, so. And it'll allow us to do more with the driveway. I think it'll be farther away from the road, and roads actually, it'll be farther away from South Grandview, and it'll be farther away from Francis Terrace. And the driveway does meet the specifications. It'll be 30 feet from any crossroad. It requires 20. So that's another thing I wanted to bring up. The driveway's not even going to be meeting the road. It's meeting the pad that's out there. And I wanted to also let you know about drainage. That house has a drain right in the middle of the front yard there. And everything's angled. If it's built the way it's supposed to be built, which we'll make sure with the site plan, there should be no problems with drainage. And there's still gonna be lots of lawn and trees, stuff that's be out there to absorb it, plus what we plant. So I'm gonna have to redo the sprinklers a little bit, no big deal there. I don't know what else I could cover that you may have questions about.
Do we have any questions or comments from the board?
Yeah, I have some thoughts. So this is the third month we've addressed this. I went around, I probably thought about this case more than any case I've ever thought about since 2003. And I appreciate that, you know, when you've got these smaller houses with smaller garages, trying to get something where you can get your vehicles in, et cetera. You know that I've kind of voiced an opinion that I think that the metal is not in, it doesn't look right for the neighborhood. Again, it's an industrial look. So what I did today was early this morning, I drove around Ponce Inlet, Daytona Beach beachside, probably put about 40 miles on my car driving around. And I took some pictures, and I'd like to put those in as part of the case if I can.
You can show the applicant.
Absolutely. I have pictures for the applicant, if you don't mind stepping forward, Mr. Strickland. And then what I'll do is I'll show them, kind of walk them through the board. This is the first pictures is a small steel garage that is just north of Dunlawton on Peninsula. Right as you pass that marina on the left-hand side, you'll see that garage sticking out. It's changed substantially since they put it in. When they originally put it in, it was gray, okay? There was no landscaping around it. It was really unattractive. I think they've been really working on trying to make it match the building, trying to put some landscaping in.
Doing their best.
Yeah, doing their best on that one. Okay. Now, looking at that one, that is basically a one-car garage.
Yeah.
Okay. It is the exact size of the house, basically, when it comes to height. Okay, it's one car. The garage door is probably, I would suspect, a 7-foot garage door, more than likely.
I don't know.
7 foot.
7 foot tall.
Okay,
Okay, probably about,
That looks tall. The one,
could be 8,
anyway.
yeah.
could be 8. It's not a roll-down steel door. It's your paneled door that comes
It's a
up.
tin door with.
Yeah, the ones that
bifolds.
have the panels that they come up, you know, they're like, the panels are like this wide. The second one, okay, is a multi-million-dollar estate down in Ponce Inlet. I remember years ago, Ponce Inlet lost their mind because this gentleman constructed this building before, and it was going up as the neighborhoods. The estate is probably a $4 million estate. It sits on the river. He has a huge, huge piece of property. But on Ponce de Leon Drive, as you drive by it, it's to your left. It's massive. It was steel. It has vastly improved because the neighbors lost their minds down there because they were like, this is completely out of character with the neighborhood. He's added siding and those things on the top, if you look at the top of the roof structure, he added those. He's added siding on the sides. What amazes me is his RV is still parked outside. I'm just like, well, what does he have inside this garage? So the other thing that I did was I went in and just did a real quick Google search of metal buildings in residential neighborhoods. And if you do that search, you will find 100 to possibly 1,000 listings on, I can't believe that this person put this metal building in this residential neighborhood. Okay, I see a lot of that. I actually went to one site where the metal building manufacturer was upset because a lot of homeowners associations will not allow metal buildings. And he was drafting out almost in a legal format how to beat your homeowners association to get your metal building inside the subdivision. So again, I think my point is that this is a historic neighborhood. It's beachside Daytona. The one thing that I did is when I did drive around, the one thing that I found, people aren't putting steel buildings on the beachside.
You're not what?
They're not putting steel buildings on the beachside. Okay?
I see 'em
It's
all.
very rare.
Yeah.
Now, I was an insurance agent for 35 years of my life, so I insured tens of thousands of homes. And I can count on one hand the number of steel buildings, which were typically small little sheds in the back of the building, in the back of the thing. No one built steel garages in residential neighborhoods. Those I always found out in, let's say, Samsula, rural areas, tractor, things of that nature. I did a lot of commercial buildings are steel, but residential buildings are not steel. And I guess my concern is, I appreciate that you've come back and said we're going to make the garage smaller. I think you're down to, Missy, you're 600 square feet, correct? Okay. More reasonable, but I still have a problem with the architectural look of it. And since we are where we are bending the rules on setbacks, when I sit on this board, and I've done it since 2003, I always look at something and say, does it make sense? And is it going to complement the neighborhood? Since we are, quote, bending the rules, are we going to bend the rules where the neighbors ultimately are not upset? The one other issue that I have with your property is the fact that it intersects with 3 different streets. You have a wide open space there, and that is what you're going to see. So it's not like this building is behind the house. It is really right on that corner, which is really like, almost like the house should have been moved over more into
Well,
that
it
corner.
ends into
Yeah,
our house. is
almost like the
last
house,
house.
it's literally your front yard
Right.
as far as the purpose go. So those are my concerns, and I guess the biggest concern that I have is we've talked about it, and, you know, you've said we're going to continue with metal, we're going to continue with metal, we're not going to do. We had a gentleman at the first meeting who was working on $1 million home on the beachside, and he actually felt a need to get up and say, well, you know, you could look at EIFS on the outside, et cetera, kind of saying, hey, aesthetically, this might look a lot better.
Right.
And I think we're back here after the 3rd month, and we're going steel. So I think those are my comments and my thoughts as to where I am. Okay.
You've stated the same thing today that you've stated all along. So
Correct.
that's, you know, I disagree with that, but I have different opinions,
Understood,
you know,
understood.
and I think it's a better investment. I think it'll hold up longer and stronger. There's a lot of advantages that we wrote down. And for somebody to say everybody's going to be staring at that building when they come to them stop signs, they don't even stop at the stop signs, number one. And, you know, I could go on and on and on.
I understand.
I've lived there for 24 years. I've seen it all in a radius of 5 miles, you know, from Main Street to, you know, when you head into the south. So I've seen metal buildings. People are putting them up more now than they used to because of the benefits of it. Maybe you didn't see them over there. I don't know. I know they're over there. You just have to know where they're at, you know. But maybe it's time for a little change also. As far as aesthetically looking industrial, you could put 10 people out on that road and look at that building, and I'll tell you what, hardly any of them will tell you it's a steel building. They won't even know by looking. I'll almost guarantee you. Now, somebody that's a carpenter or builds homes might, and they will, if they're smart. But I don't think it's going to pop out. It's going to be different because it's a wide open lawn. You know, I mean, I could put a pool there. I could put anything that went in there is going to stand right out, whether it's above ground or not. People put cages around their pools. You know, they change things as it goes down, just like we said we would with the, you know, the landscaping is going to get done. The drainage is a problem. By the time you have things around that building, even a fence, whatever it takes, you're going to see half the building. I just don't understand how this glow-in-the-dark building's going to be stuck there. I just don't see that. I don't really see that. And, you know, making it color match the house is even better because it's going to look like it's part of the house. But it's the garage. It's the garage.
So, I mean, I too, after the first time we continued it, and now after the second time, I've tried to be very aware of when I'm driving around, you know, looking for these types of buildings. And I've seen ones in good condition, bad condition. You know, overall, that's probably, we've reduced the size a little bit. That's probably my one reservation. But then I also have to balance that with that this is almost kind of your backyard, you know, because you don't really have a true backyard. So this is kind of your backyard. And also with the fact that, you know, none of your neighbors not only weren't against it, but also seemed to be in favor of it. And I don't have any doubt, I've said this before, that you are going to maintain it beautifully and it probably will not be a problem during your time of ownership. So those are some of the things I'm still weighing in my head. My question to staff is how does this, if we say yes today and then the building gets replaced, like can we place like a time limit on it or say if it ever has to be replaced, you know, they have to come back? Or are we saying yes to this like forever and ever and ever? Or can we place some restrictions on that?
I mean, you can place some restrictions, but it might be hard to enforce some of them.
Right.
Requiring that it be treated as, say, a non-conforming structure so that if it's destroyed, it can't be replaced.
Yeah, you
know,
always get what I'm trying to ask.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what you were talking about. You know, I don't know how that addresses whether the structure meets the criteria for a variance or not, right? You can impose conditions that are necessary for this to meet the requirements of a variance. So, for example, if you're concerned with harmony, would that be justification for you to grant it subject to a change in the materials? Yeah, I mean, you could do that. I think it might be hard to enforce the non-conforming structure aspect of it. I mean, among other things, it could be hard for staff to pick up on that if there is an
Right.
event.
Okay.
And I suspect the applicant if they knew that, if a hurricane wiped out the structure, they couldn't replace it, they probably, if you asked them, they probably would withdraw the variance at that point. But, if you can justify it based on it helping meet the variance criteria, then that's a condition you could impose.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions or comments?
You want to tell your,
Would you like to say something?
A couple of things I have found to be incredibly frustrating with this. I appreciate the board's concerns about the look of the building and its place in the neighborhood. Many of the homes around us are very lovely. The people do a good job maintaining them. They're obviously proud of them. There are also many homes that are not maintained. They have mold on them, yards are overgrown. There's a house down the street where the garage door is off and there's a tarp hanging there. Code enforcement writes up many of these cases, some of which drag on for years, some of which are resolved and then come back. So I'm frustrated that it's almost like, well, all that's going to happen, somebody else has to deal with it, we can't put this up. And as you mentioned, this is the only space we have available to place it. The house was built in 1949, before either of us were ever born. So we had nothing to do with how they chose to put the house on the lot, the direction it faced, anything. If it had been placed differently, we might have a real backyard where we could put a garage, but we don't. And so we're trying to fit something in as best we can with the space we have available. So that's kind of where we are. In an ideal world, a metal building has a lot of advantages, and there are some disadvantages in the look of it and the perceived look of it. People assume it means something that it may not. But I know, we're going into 4th of July weekend. We have a lot of neighbors that set off fireworks all weekend that land in our yard and on top of our house. One thing I wouldn't have to worry about with a metal building and a metal roof is that catching on fire. We can just worry about our yard and house. We feel like it'd be more secure in a lot of ways, especially the roll-up doors to prevent break-ins and theft. That has been a problem at times in our neighborhood. His truck has been keyed and it's been broken into. So we're trying to find a way to take care of our property while also respecting the fact we do want it to look nice. We don't want to create an eyesore in the neighborhood. There's enough of them there. So all we can do is take care of what we have and maintain it as well as we can.
I did like your points, in your resubmittal about, a concrete, still having the metal or the wood,
wood.
Roof and the fireworks. I mean, that couldn't be an issue, And I agree with everything you said about code enforcement. We also have a neighbor who, we're having some of those same, it gets resolved and it comes back. So I totally understand and empathize with that. Unfortunately, that's not something, that this board is in charge of, but I hear you. Could I ask one more question? And I think I've asked it before, but I just want to make sure. If this was, a 10 by 10 and we weren't talking about setbacks, would the metal, the material be at all an issue? We wouldn't be here, right, if it wasn't for the setback thing?
Correct. The requirement for the structure to look like the primary structure doesn't come into play with anything less than 200 square feet.
Okay, so it'd have to be under 200 square feet.
200 or less, it can be a metal building.
Okay, so if it was, so that's 200 square feet and we're talking about 600 square feet. So if it was 400 square feet, but there was no setback
400
problem?
would still be required. Anything more than 200 is required to look like the primary structure.
So would we be here in front of this board or it just wouldn't be allowed?
They're here because it wasn't permitted.
Okay,
It would have been one of the requirements as well.
okay.
Madam Chair, again, I understand completely you want a big garage. I get that, okay?
All right.
I said I understand completely you want a big garage. I completely
Not a big
understand.
garage, it's a two-car garage.
So,
You got rid of my 30-footers, so now, I got a two-car garage, not a big two-car garage.
I think what Ms. Ballard was just talking about was the fact that if it was a 200-square-foot shed, I wouldn't have any problems whatsoever. It's small, it's metal, I see them in people's backyards, I don't have a problem with them. Again, where this one sits, and I am sorry that years ago somebody placed it the way they did, but it sits right literally in your, let's call it front yard, okay, right at the intersection of those streets. I don't have a problem with the metal roof. People are putting more and more metal roofs on. I think it's a better idea. I was an insurance agent for years. Metal roofs are much better than asphalt shingle roofs because they last longer, they're much more resistant to hurricanes, et cetera. The problem that I have is that the siding of the building, when I look at this and I look at this, these two pictures of these that you've submitted, in my opinion, this does not strengthen your case. This to me looks like industrial metal. And I know it's going to match the house. I'm not trying to be difficult. Just when I'm going to break a rule, if you will, I would like it to aesthetically match the house. And basically, we have rules in the code that says that if it's over a certain size, it should mirror the look of the house. This does not mirror the look of your house. So,
Sit down, make and vote. I mean, I don't know what else we can do. Here's your picture back. If this doesn't look industrial, I don't know what does.
oh,
And those are your pictures.
no, I'm saying it, my point was that it did look industrial. That's why Ponce Inlet lost their minds when it was put up.
Ponce Inlet's a little different than Beachside and Daytona Beach, where most of the people that are there don't even live in this state, especially where I live. I mean, that's all through, and they're just going through one street. I mean, there's only two streets, South Grandview, A1A, that's it.
You want to make a motion?
Sure, if there's no other comments. Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion regarding case A BOA 2022-007. Based on the updated information that was submitted in the packet we're looking at today and previous meetings, I move that we vote to approve the submitted application.
Okay, do we have a second?
I second it.
Okay, can we have a roll call?
Mr. Connors?
Agree.
Mr. Harshaw?
No.
Ms. Barhu?
Yes.
Mr. George?
Yes.
Ms. Bowler?
Yes.
So the variance is granted.
Yes.
You're very
Proud, please.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Make it proud.
Represent.
Give me 1 year.
I'm going to be driving past your house every day. No, I'm just kidding.
I may not
We'll be by next week.
Yeah, for the barbecue
Thank you
on
for your
Monday. I feel like you just invited us to a barbecue.
That is not an official condition of the trip,
No,
just for the record.
but we will drive by.
I'll even invite Mr. Harshaw.
Fair enough.
I'm going to use your case as like really the measuring stick for,
don't disappoint us.
Because I was like swaying right till the end, and some of it has to do with like your property, the way that it doesn't really have a backyard, and so it's just like barely a yes.
We're doing our best.
So good luck to you.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you.
Okay,
Uh-huh. You're welcome.
thank you.
I'll send you guys a letter. I'll send you guys a letter. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, a review of the cases, questions?
No.
Okay, at the end, okay. So, a review of the cases, please?
Case A was approved 4-1.
Okay. New business,
I have a question. And I asked this maybe a year or two ago. Are we locked in to Thursdays at 1 o'clock? Is there a standard or a reason or something to carry through about that?
Other than just there's nothing in the code that requires the meeting be held on Thursdays at 1 o'clock. The board, if the board wanted to have the meetings at a different time, and there were openings in the city's regular schedule, which could be an issue. For example, if you wanted to make your meetings the first Wednesday of the month at 6 p.m., that's when the commission meets in this chamber. So, or the fourth Thursday at 6 p.m., that's when the planning board meets. So I'm not aware of all of the meetings that routinely take place, but you could request a change in time. It's possible that if as a result of your request, the manager's office couldn't staff it with somebody, then, they might want to get back with you, but you could change the day of the month.
What were
at
you,
the time.
what were you thinking?
Actually, I don't have a predetermined time or day. I just threw out the idea, quite frankly, I'm retired. So I don't have to worry about getting back to the practice or getting back to the store or whatever. But when I was working, a meeting at 1 o'clock would be the death sentence for me.
It's difficult.
I couldn't do it.
It's difficult.
I mean, I agree with you there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's right off the
I'm
line.
just, and I'm suggesting to the board, let's think about it.
So, I personally would be open to different days and times because I agree it is right in the middle of the day. So I usually don't go to work before or after because then I'm just driving around. However, what I'm not in favor of is it doesn't work. And now we're almost what we did today this time. And it's fine because I want to accommodate the applicants. And so I will always try. But that's something I'm not in favor of, because I tend to plan, sometimes I even plan a trip around, Thursday I want to be here. And so then when it changes, it knocks off the rest of my schedule, And so I really only do it for the applicant to be nice, but yeah, I mean, I'm open to, I'd like to propose Wednesdays at 8 a.m. No, I'm just kidding.
It
If
would
you guys
be-
want, I can find the commission chamber's regular schedule and email that to you.
Oh, that would be
guys.
cool.
You guys can look and see if everybody can agree on a better time.
And I'm glad you actually brought that up because to that note, I think sometimes it has also been a barrier. I don't have any intrinsic evidence of this, but a barrier to finding, some people because,
Could be.
and it's not always that they can't leave their job, but that they, it just is very disruptive to the day. So if some people go to lunch and then it's after lunch and then maybe they need to go,
It could be,
Right.
today's meeting was, 25 minutes? Or it could be, other meetings are 2.5 hours. It's just that when you kick it off at 1 o'clock, the rest of the day
it's over.
could be
Yeah.
done.
Right.
And if I'm a working stiff,
You are so
I
right.
would sit there and say, that's why
Right.
it might be trouble. So I don't have I do
No,
not
I
have
agree.
a proposal. I'm throwing it out for discussion for everyone to think about.
I love the
because I don't know
idea.
Your schedules.
Yeah. I love the idea and I appreciate you for saying it, So yeah, if you could do that and then if there's a different day or time, do you agree? Is it hard
Yeah.
for you in the middle of the day too?
Well, it's hard for me because I work in the Southeast Volusia.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Right.
I either run to Southeast Volusia, work, and
Right.
then run back up here, and then as soon as I get in my car, I'm heading back to Southeast Volusia again, which then I turn around and come back
That's
to
a
Daytona
long
Beach
ways.
Pizza.
And I'm in Port Orange, which,
so-
I feel like that shouldn't bear, but I too, and it's only 10 or 12 minutes, but it's
But it is
still,
going to throw me off because since 2003, it's been Thursday at 1 o'clock on the third Thursday. So,
I know.
Oh, I'm going to have to change my calendar.
It's in your head now.
Yeah.
Change is coming.
Exactly.
Right, right.
Change is a coming. So
Change
if
is
you could you email that to us so we can form thoughts about it maybe by the next one? And then while we're on that topic, so sometimes we don't have that application in front of us, but when they fill out the application and they have to say, meet the requirements with the lines, is that is the way that's worded somehow required, or does that have flexibility too? And the reason I'm asking what is because sometimes I see people put just yes and no, or yes, it meets it, and I realize they really aren't open-ended questions, like they don't require explanation. And so, just as we go on with this, I'm going to be less likely to just approve things. I feel like I've said this before, and they're just like, I don't like I need the people to make a case for me and tell me why they need this. And so when they're just putting yes or no, and sometimes staff then, does a longer answer, which is great, but it's really up to the applicant to do that. So
I've had that conversation because the conversation that you and I have that conversation with every applicant. I say, this is you pleading your case. Please give them all your information, answer, give them everything. And there are certain people who do variances regularly that it's simply yes, no, yes, no. And, but I have, because of what you and I spoke about, I have that conversation.
thank you. And it annoys me each time, but then I realize that this is the first time they're hearing that from me, and so it's not fair to say no because the form is worded that way. So if it's not required, could we bring if I brought a suggestion next time, or is it determined by another body that's not here?
The questions on the form are literally taken from
Okay.
the variance criteria. However, if this board wanted that form amended to basically say something to the effect of, single word answers are not acceptable, please state the basis for your answer. And then if somebody didn't provide anything other than just yes, then under the Land Development Code, that is not a complete application.
Okay.
And there are procedures in place at a staff level where somebody is told, supplement this information. They're given a little bit of
Okay.
opportunity to do that, and then if they don't, then they have to reapply because
Okay.
the application's rejected.
Okay.
So-
Yeah, and I'm not trying to be difficult, but I do believe don't they have to satisfy all of them? It's not just one.
Technically,
And
all of the
so
variance criteria need to be.
sometimes I don't feel I always try to find something that's different, to justify it on the facts of that case. But sometimes but I feel to just not approve it because they didn't meet all of them. It's almost like we're not giving them the due process because the questions are worded so that they can just be answered yes or no. So could I bring a suggestion next time? Or is that out of?
No, I
Okay.
think you could bring a
Okay.
suggestion and the board could vote on it.
Okay.
Just to, I agree. But we need to think about this. Many of the people that we're going to see have high school educations.
I know. Yeah, and I think about that.
Writing a minimal essay is difficult. So just all I'm throwing out is think this through, because I agree with
Right.
you. I would like to see, at least with that question, give me a reason.
Give me
Give
even
me
the
some-
fireworks thing.
Yeah.
Give me something.
But
You
I
don't-
just want us to
Right,
also
right.
think about,
Right.
they're not going to go out and hire an attorney.
No, and I don't need that. In fact, I don't want that because the attorney is used to manipulating. Not manipulating. Not that attorneys would do that, but we would never do that.
Spoken
Manipulating
like
the
an
facts. There's two sides. I think you're taught as an attorney. There's two arguments, and then there's always the right thing in the middle. But so just to encourage more explanation, I guess is all.
I'm just right with
Yeah.
you.
You're right.
And I just,
I've always found that, again, I've been on this board a real long time. They come up and make their case at the podium. For instance, this last case, okay, they're making a point that fireworks get thrown. Yet they have an asphalt shingle roof on their house, but yet the garage is going to be protected, but the house is going to burn.
Right.
Okay, so that argument doesn't hold water with me because in that,
Water.
what, when I looked at that case, the reason for these, in my opinion, self-induced hardship was cost. Cost is not a hardship, okay? To me, that building should have been blocked with a wood truss roof with an asphalt shingle roof that matched the house, okay? The reason, he can say hurricane resistant and everything else, but the bottom line is that structure should have matched the house. It's okay that it got approved. I think as you say, when you go drive by it, I think you will be disappointed when you see it.
I think I will be too.
You will be disappointed, but it's fine. I think, so those arguments sometimes, I like it, the fact that they're saying it in front of a podium where we can interject and say, cost isn't a hardship.
Right.
So one of his hardship rules is that we can't afford anything else other than a steel building, because he's paying probably $17,000 for this building, where a concrete block stuccoed structure would have cost him, probably with current building costs, $60,000 or $70,000. He doesn't want to spend that. So he's gone with an industrial metal building, which to me is completely out of character with the neighborhood. And so I think when they're standing here hardship-wise, especially for somebody even with maybe less education, who's able to at least articulate and say, okay, this is why this has happened. There's many cases that we deal with where we had a case last month where the house jutted out a little bit, and because it was platted years ago, that's a no-brainer to me. It's like, yeah, you want to add on, great, no problem. Something like this is one that I really look at really, really hard, because we have these rules for a reason. The reason we have setbacks and design requirements is because people have screamed for years because people will do amazing things with their homes, as you well know. Yeah. Code enforcement wise, we see it all the time. Houses that have had tarps on them since 2004 because they still haven't replaced the roof.
Right.
Yeah.
You mentioned two things. I'd like to get clarification on exactly our role as the Board of Adjustments, because you mentioned setbacks and then you mentioned architectural, okay? To me, that seems like two different things, and one of them doesn't belong to what we're supposed to be doing, or maybe I don't understand the role of this board completely.
So the Land Development Code, for the most part, doesn't contain specific material requirements for things like garages. So as we were talking about before, if the applicants had come in with a garage that met all of the setbacks, they could have built a metal garage. Mm-hmm. However, the Board of Adjustment, in applying variance criteria, is entitled to propose or approve with conditions that are intended to ensure the variance meets the criteria. So if one of the criteria, for example, is harmony with the surrounding neighborhood, and the thought is that by having a building closer to the street and more visible because of its unusual location or size, then it would be an appropriate condition if the board decided that would be a defensible condition, that the materials, consist of concrete block or something like that, materials to match the house. Because that is a basis for determining that the structure is harmonious, whereas a metal structure wouldn't be. Now, y'all can debate whether you think that's appropriate, but if the board decided that to impose that condition, that would be a defensible condition.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a requirement in this zoning district for anything greater than any detached structure greater than 200 square feet must look the same or similar to the primary building.
But those plans, those are approved by the planning department, right? To me, that seems out of our purview of what the building materials. That should be something that done by
So
when he submits the permit for it.
if the applicants had proposed to build a fully conforming 20 by 20 garage that didn't violate setbacks, and they proposed a metal structure and staff said, no, that doesn't meet the primary building, they would not be able to get a variance. Because the variances are really only from dimensional, locational, numerical
Right.
standards.
So if there was not going to be, if there wasn't a request to change the variance, then it would have been denied by this plan here would have been denied by the planning department.
So how is that going to be handled when they're building it of a material and it's an accessory structure greater than 200 square feet and it doesn't look like the main building?
We just tell them it has to look that way or
Well,
they can't do it.
No, I think that it was understood by the board that the building was going to be made of metal.
Are you talking about in this case or
Yeah,
just in general?
I was referring to this specific
Oh, in
case.
this case, well, they've received the variance, so
But like,
So if they did, so back to, sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Back to, if they weren't asking for a variance and they went to build that structure, you all would have said no.
Yes.
And
Well,
that's
not
not,
because it was metal necessarily.
they
Yeah,
would have
because
said no
that's
because it
exactly
didn't match the material. And to be honest, I wasn't aware that that was a condition within this district. And it may be something that, you know, we want to make sure you have information regarding in the next case that has something
Because in
similar.
that case, I mean, from my understanding then of this, they, and I'm not suggesting they had, but they looked at a variance because they didn't want to go through, they couldn't proceed through the regular process unless the building matched the house.
No, the main reason for the variance was because they weren't meeting setbacks. And they knew before the variance was ever even requested or suggested, you know, they knew it's got to meet the setbacks, and if it's over 200 square feet, it has to match the primary structure. They knew that going in, and they said, we want to move forward with a variance.
I guess then I misunderstood. So like, it has to match the primary structure, but I didn't think like the fact that it was metal was anything. And I understand that it's over 200 square feet and has to match, but like he was talking about the same color and all this type of stuff. So I guess I thought that would be like a code, like it wasn't.
If staff were to ask me that question, I would need to look at the code language and make that determination. But in this case, since that was implicitly within the terms of the variance, I think that's been decided by this board. In the future, we would want to make sure you have that information as part of the backup.
Yeah, that would have been helpful for me to work through.
Well, and
No fault.
if we're talking generally, that's okay, but there is a possibility that if this variance isn't commenced, the applicants will be back in front of this board, and any considerations you have of the variance need to be at the hearing. You don't want to run into a situation where you're basically deliberating on that variance outside of the quasi-judicial hearing. So we probably should leave discussion of that particular case for another day if it comes back.
And I agree. But I
Yeah.
think it's a good point, you know, like sometimes I do feel like we springboard off, like the issues are skirting, you know, like one time we like voted yes or no on something, but we had this huge discussion about historical stuff. And this was when different members were present, and that wasn't before this board. And so while I empathize with a lot of those things, like, I don't know that it's something that, we kind of use it as the condition sometimes, but like, I don't think we've been doing that lately, so.
Well, over the years, I mean, just some history, over the years, as we've decided on these, there have been times that somebody, obviously they want a variance, so they're breaking the rules. And, so a building is closer to the road, or it's closer to a neighbor, or, so the neighbor will come and say, hey, they want to put their garage closer to my property, and I know that when they come in at night, the headlights are going to go directly into my bedroom window. So we have done in the past, okay, you have to put up landscaping that it's at least 6 feet tall, so that your lights don't shine in, and you get kickback because most of these things are costly, and the applicants will kick back, and you just kind of have to draw a hard line sometimes and just say, you're not going to get your variance approved if you don't accommodate your neighbor, because you're asking us to break a rule, put your garage closer to the neighbor's bedroom window, which your garage headlights, I hear their concern. So over the years, we've done a lot of that, and I think you're right. We haven't done as much as we used to do. But on this, I mean, you saw me on that one. I'm taking a firm stand on that particular case. But, there's been other ones where it's like, we also get the neighbors that come in and they live 3 streets down and they're complaining because, I don't know, they have some beef with that neighbor from 4 years ago, and it has absolutely nothing to see. You kind of, as you're going through this, you have to kind of see where people are coming from. I do wish that people had a little badge right here that said, this is where I'm coming from, you know. And, but like, I think Patrick was kind of saying, did they go for a variance because they wanted to build out of metal, and hey, if we go to a variance and they approve it, then we can build a metal building. I think that's where your insight was going.
But at
You
the
know,
end
but
of the day, I didn't feel that that was before us, you know, if it was metal or not, like, it was.
so again, we're not supposed to be talking about this case, but.
But I can
yes.
give you a more definitive answer because I now see the explicit
Ooh.
requirement. So the land development code is clear that you can grant variances regarding numerical and dimensional standards that are in several chapters of the code. This particular standard is a numerical standard. It reads, accessory structures greater than 200 square feet in floor area. I'm sorry, yes, 200 square feet in floor area must have the same or similar exterior finish and roof design. Now, if that provision instead said accessory structures must have the same or similar exterior finish, and there was no number requirement in that, that's not a numerical standard, but it is. They were asking to have something 600 or whatever the dimensions were without having to match that. So technically, that is within your purview because it's a numerical standard.
Okay.
So a lot of that stuff is very specific to, you know, what's the language in the code. But if the issue came up again, you know, that would be a part of their variance request. We want to go 600 feet without having to meet that. That's clearly in there.
Yeah, I just, you know, in that neighborhood, there are a bunch of garages, you know, like that are metal and big. So, you know, don't you think they're just tucked away somewhere? But this doesn't
Right.
really have a back.
And I've always tried to put a common sense, you know, you want something that it's going to be a give and take. Okay,
what I
so
mean.
if you want this, then you have to do this.
Right.
Okay, that's the way I look at it. You know, again, the reason that we have setbacks is because of feuding neighbors, and over the years, it's like, okay, we have to have a land development code. So, yep.
Okay, say Levy. Any other questions, comments?
I'm sorry I opened it.
No, it's good. I think it's good because I think,
Are you talking
know,
about the date, or are you talking about
we're
the? no.
talking about this because we would like to do our job as best as possible. And, you know, I think they were all good questions, whether that means the meeting's at a perfect time or, you know, we understand all the standards, so.
Yeah, and one other thing, Ms. Phillips actually pointed out while we were in discussion generally that specific provision of the land development code was in that staff report. It was one of the things that was
Okay.
noted. So, it was fair for the board to consider that.
Okay. Yeah, and I think it's a good lesson for the next time, you know. And I don't think, like, I think the staff reports are great. Like, you guys do a good job, and you're always so knowledgeable. Sometimes I'm like, I don't want to ask this because I don't want to put you on the spot, but you always somehow know the answer. So, so thank you.
Or good at making one up.
So,
Yeah.
so Ben, thank you for keeping us out of trouble. Missy, thank
Yeah.
you for your work.
Absolutely. Thanks for
Becky,
being here.
Becky, thank you for your always well-read, always.
I know.
I'm telling you, you do a great
We haven't been able to stump you guys yet. We're going to try harder.
And I tell you, tech support is amazing these days.
I know.
We never, I mean, every once in a while now I look up and if someone's speaking, that's the person that's on the
I
screen.
know, it's
I'm
like,
like, this is impressive.
Sometimes I watch the screen more than I watch.
Ms. Groom also.
Oh, no.
Oh,
We
yeah.
already talked about Miss Groom, talked about, yes.
You know, she's our favorite.
She's
you
our
know?
favorite.
Oh, boy.
Mrs. Groom is very efficient.
You are.
Favorite because she dumped every board except this one.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Well,
Wow.
well, you know, the evidence is clear. We are
Is it-
very nice.
It can't
you
be.
know, just kidding.
It can't be because we're easy. I always think
know.
we're problem. I always think we're problem child.
And now we've given you like 20 extra minutes a minute, so I apologize. But thank you for serving as like our second brain, basically. Like,
Very good.
To close the meeting.
thank you.
I'll second it,
That?
yeah.
It seems like, okay.
Come on.
All in favor? Let's just close it. Let me use this thing.
There you go.
All right.